said on my website, I've been writing a lot on my website. If anybody wants to read, they can visit it.
It's awesome.
It's called loyaltoliberty.com. Actually, the full name of it is Alan Keyes is Loyal to Liberty. Okay? And I would hope that we could fit any name of any good patriotic American into that same phrase.
Yes.
But in order to be loyal to liberty, we do have to occasionally remember that liberty is not what some of these people want us to believe it is. It's not the freedom to do whatever we want, satisfy whatever passions we feel, redefine every institution, including the most elementary institutions of human civilized life, in order to satisfy and gratify our vanity and our selfishness and our pleasure. That's not freedom.
Yes.
Liberty consists in understanding that our freedom has come in the rights we hold from the hand of Almighty God, and we shall keep it as long as we exercise those freedoms with respect to the same God that gave them to us in the first. And with that understanding, we know that the boundaries of freedom are what make freedom possible, and that at the end of the day, there is only one sure bulwark of liberty. And that is the self-discipline, self-government, faith, piety, and responsibility of every single individual who wishes to be free.
Yeah!
People have asked me over the years why it is that I spend so much time talking about the moral challenge we face as a people. But I'll tell you, in 1996, I gave a speech at the beginning of the year in which I basically made one point. And the key point was that we faced a crisis as America that looked like a money crisis, but that in point of fact, we don't have money problems. We have moral problems.
That's right.
Now wait. Every analysis I've seen of the current banking crisis suggests that at its root you had some greed and you had some irresponsibility. Does that sound like a money problem to you? Because that sounds like a moral problem to me. You had at its root the inordinate ambition of politicians willing to aid and abet a false scheme of financial betterment so that they could better their political ambitions and their desire for office. Does that inordinate ambition, willing to sacrifice the common good of our people, sound to you like a money problem or a moral problem? And in order to answer this moral problem, we now have an individual sitting in the White House who tells us that we can solve the problem of today by sacrificing the hope and the liberty and the prosperity and the livelihood of our children and our grandchildren through all the tomorrow. Does that sound like a money problem to you? But here's the clincher that some may not want to hear. The very same heart that is willing to sacrifice the next generation and the next generation after that in order to pretend that we are dealing with our own problems is the same heart that will reach into the womb of life and sacrifice the living generations waiting to be born. We don't have money problems. We have moral problems. And the answer to that moral problem is to take the first step toward the regeneration of the character and integrity, not of our politicians, and not of our bankers, and not of our government, but of we, the people. Here's the question. If this is still the land of the free and the home of the brave, then what I see happening here today can't just be a gesture and a little letting off of steam. It must represent a solemn commitment to get off the couch of couch potato citizenship, to get away from the belief that what lying pundits and left-wing media gurus tell you has any truth in it whatsoever.
Yeah, you betcha.
You know, this country was, at the end of the day, built up by folks who weren't like some of the people that I'm hearing from now and have heard from for many years. I was reminded of it because a fellow put a comment on my website the other day, and in which he said that he was willing to back anybody who looked like they were successful. That's what he said. And it reminded me of that scene in High Noon. Remember that old movie?
Yeah.
One of those great westerns that if we still watched them, we probably wouldn't have to be here today. But and in one of those scenes, the sheriff is going around trying to find people who will help him against the bad guy. And some of them are hiding, they don't want to be seen, and others of them are kind of doing their best to kind of say no and not look too much like cowards. There's one fellow, though, who seems all eager and ready, and he says, I love everything you were standing for, and so forth and so on, but, and if you can get some other folks to back you, I'll stand with you. But you know, that's what has gotten us into this problem. People who think this way are essentially like herd animals. They're waiting to see which way the herd goes. And if the herd happens to be stampeding off a cliff, they will happily join it in destruction. And this is where we are right now. We are in a situation where I don't care what you call them. You can put any label on them you like. Right now, we have people who are basically eyes in the same head and two heads on the same body. They pretend to fight with one another, and meanwhile their feet are walking us over the cliff, where our Constitution is destroyed, where our economy is bankrupt, where our independence is forfeit, and where our sovereignty as a people is no more. So, if you're waiting on that, if you're waiting on those people and they can spend some money and get the herd together and go happily into the slaughter pens, where we shall go from being proud citizens of the United States, fearing no one but our God, to being the subjects of a government where we must fear its every shadow.
That's right. That's right.
So which we end up being is going to depend on whether we're going to be like that guy in High Noon or like the sheriff. Because the sheriff understood what we must understand. If the thing is right, then you stand for it. And you don't wait until someone else comes along beside. Because the heart that maintains liberty is not the heart of the herd, but the heart of the individual.
Yes! Yeah.
This country was built by those who understood that the wilderness could not be opened except by those who are willing to venture forth alone if need be. That the new idea could not be explored, the new invention could not be created except by those who are willing to break through paths of understanding. And we must understand that no herd will save this country if we are not willing to stand alone if we must for the sake of its liberty. I ask this of you. If you have come here today, then you know that you are not alone. But if you are to succeed tomorrow, then you must be willing to stand where you stand, even though you are. For we will have truly rediscovered our moral strength when we discover the strength that we find as we stand alone for what is right.
Amen. Yes.
But you know the beautiful thing about that? If you're standing and you think you're all by yourself, but you're doing what in your heart of hearts you know to be needed to save the God-given liberty, the God-given decency, the God-given family, the God-given rights that we have enjoyed as a people. And though you bow your head beneath the weight of all that loneliness, when you lift it up, you shall be standing in the light of our Almighty God. I believe, y'all, that in the midst of all this stuff, that's why they've been trying to assault Christianity so hard, and assault piety so hard, and assault belief in God so hard, because they know that at the end of the day, there will be no herd driven to slaughter when every individual is an army empowered by their faith in God.